In today's video, in the cabinet making series, we're going to be building these shaker flat panel doors. We have the single doors on top, a whole row of the doors on the bottom, which have the perfect even reveal. And I'll show you how to do all that and get your perfect air gap in between so none of the doors contact each other when they open and close. And I'll show you how to do the hinges and everything like that. We're using concealed hinges. We're working in metric, but I'm going to give you some imperial measurements too. These are 13 millimeter overlay or an imperial to 1/2 inch. So let's go over the math really quick for these doors, and I'll show you just a really easy method of figuring out what you need to cut your length of the rails to, because that's really all you need to calculate other than the length of the stiles being what they are with the overlay. So I'm going to show you everything right now. It's real quick and easy. Okay, first thing you need to do is get the width of your opening. In my case, the width of my opening, I had 800, which means that the center was going to be 400, so each door had to be 400 millimeters in width divided by 2, right? So 800 millimeters divided by 2 gives me a 400 millimeter and a 400 millimeter door. In the case here in the center, you need a gap so that those doors, they can swing open without hitting one another. So usually I do a 2 millimeter gap in between there as a reveal. Okay, so to calculate how I did this, we had 800 millimeter opening, we divide it in half, we get 400. Now we need to add in the 13 millimeters of the overlay. So you have 400 plus the 13, it's 413 millimeters in total from the end of the door where it overlays to the middle where it meets. You need to subtract a millimeter from this door and a millimeter from that door so that in the middle where they meet there's a 2 millimeter gap or a reveal. Like I said before, that allows the doors to swing freely without touching, and it gives a nice pleasant look to the doors where everything has a nice reveal in between each door. Okay, so 413 millimeters minus the 1 millimeter, you have 412 millimeters. Now each one of these stiles, the stiles run vertically, the rails run horizontally. So to calculate the size of the rail, because you need to figure out the size of this subtracting your stiles. So what you're going to have is you have 50 millimeters. I make them 50 millimeters wide. So we had 413 millimeter door minus the 1 millimeter gave us 412 millimeters. So to make this door 412 millimeters, I need to subtract 100. So the inside rail is going to be 312 millimeters. So that when I put this together with the domino, I don't have to figure out any integral tenons or anything like that. That's the beauty of the domino. It's going to mortise into both pieces, so I don't have to calculate anything extra for any tenons. So this door, I would have to cut the rail, which I set up a stop block for. You're going to see how we do that. You set up a stop block, cut all the rails at the same time, 312 millimeters. Then when we put the stiles and everything together, when we glue it up, then my total width of the door will be the 412 millimeters that I need to create that overlay and have it meet in the center with the 1 millimeters in between of an air gap. Now the stiles, the way you would calculate the length of the stiles for the upper or lower doors this goes for, is just to make your mark at, or even just to measure your opening from top to bottom, and then add in your overlay. If you had 1250 millimeters as the opening, then you would add in 26 millimeters, and you would get 1276 millimeters, and that would be the length of your stile. I have all the pieces milled up to 50 millimeters in width, 19 millimeters thick material. We're going to just cut first a 90 on the edge of one piece so that I know that it's square to the parallel edges, and then we're going to set up a stop block and make repetitive cuts to cut all the sizes of the doors that I need for the lengths of the stiles and the rails. Okay, so I have my parts of the door here. Now it's time for me to do some layout. These are my upper and lower rails These are my styles of the door. So right now what I want to do is just put them in the place where they're going to go to see where I have the best faces of the board, the flattest faces. And just put my pieces together in an orientation where I see how perfectly square they line up. And now what I'm going to do is just make a mark on all the pieces so that I know where my inside face is. So now I know all my faces, that's where my groove has to go. Okay, so I could just now, I could put A and A, B and B, C, C, D, and D. So now I know this is the orientation. So I'll go ahead and I'll mark out all the rest of them, and then you'll see how I make a groove with the router here. Okay, so I've carefully marked out all the boards exactly where I'm going to be using the flap on the domino adapter, because this will put me 20 millimeters to the middle of the bit. And I don't want to use the flap here because that's 37 millimeters away. So that would put me way too far to the edge of the board. So 20 millimeters is going to get me somewhat centered, and that's going to be referenced on all the edges to make everything flush. I'm going to turn the machine on and use the tight setting on everything. This way all my parts will line up and there'll be no having to mess with it at all later on once I get in the clamps from glue up. I'm going to use the Vaxis for this. It's going to speed it up a lot for me. Okay, so I'm about to run a groove in all the parts of my doors. I have to make sure that I run it on the right side of the door, which would be the inside of where the inside panel is going to go. So when we made the marks for the face, for the inside of where the inside panel goes, now I have a mark on all of my rails and stiles, and I'm putting them all in the same direction, facing up, and they're going to be facing me, so that all I have to do is make a mark on the face of the board. I'm going to route down a groove just about 9 millimeters. So I set my pocket rule to 9 millimeters. I make a mark at 9 millimeters in on a 19 millimeter board. It's roughly the center, right? And now I put all my pieces with my arrows facing up. That's where my inside panel is going to go. And now all I have to do is, since I marked out just that one board, now I don't have to think about it. All I have to do is make sure that all of my marks are facing up in the same direction, and they're all facing this way towards me, so I know that when I set this, I'm going to be referencing the same face of each one of those boards. So then I'm going to put it in my clamping elements. Okay, you could do this on a router table also, but I'm going to do it with this just because it's going to be quick. Okay, so I repositioned the camera so maybe you can get a better angle here. So I have my groove, all my pieces are facing the same exact direction, referencing the same face. So now I have a center line right here where the center of my bit is going to be. So I need my parallel edge to go right here and give me my center line here of where I want to route the groove. So what I'm going to do is loosen up. And now what I want to do is just move my center line and line it right up with the center of my mark and get it as best as possible. I'm just going to insert my router into the base and I'm going to lock it in place. And now I need to set the height of my bit, and what I have to set the height is, I have to loosen this up, loosen this back up. I need this to be 9 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is use a 5 millimeter and a 4 millimeter domino, and I'm going to create a ceiling with another domino, and I'm just going to use my fine adjustment here, and now my height is set at 9 millimeters, and now I'm going to hook it up to dust collection and we're ready to route. So the way this is going to work is after I route the groove, so this is going to support me just like a router table. So I'll come from the edge here, I'll run it in, I'll route my groove, I have support. Once I make the first groove, all I have to do is loosen my clamping elements. take this piece that's routed, bring it to the back, and just continue. Route my next piece, and so on and so forth. I'm just going to continue that in that way, and the process should go pretty quick. So these grooves are going to be blocked by the stiles. So we don't need to worry about any exposed grooves. But on the stiles, if I run the groove all the way through to the end, then there will be a little slot exposed. Now you can plug those up with a custom-made wood plug, or you can route it out and make a domino. But I want to save a little time, so with the stiles, I'm going to do a stop groove, and I'll show you how to do that. So first, let's run these, and then we'll worry about the stiles next. Okay, now for this part, I have my stiles that I need to do a stopped groove. So what I'm going to do is position them the same way that I did for the rails, put them all together with my insides facing up and the face of the boards facing me for the same reference. I'm plunging down the same depth, but now what I'm going to do is, this is a 50mm piece of the scrap cutoff, and I know I want to stop somewhere in here so that it's not going to interfere with any of the domino, but at the same time, I'm going to be able to fit the center panels in there without having to have the groove run all the way up and then plug up the hole. So what I'm going to do is just take that piece of scrap. I have these all flush on the ends, and I'm just going to put this flush to the end of all of them like this. Make sure that it goes across all the pieces there, and then I'm just going to scribe a line right across all those pieces. So it's kind of like a gang layout here. And I'll do the same on the end over here. And it doesn't really matter, this is not crucial, but we want it just close. Because basically what I want to do now is I want to start the router somewhere right in here, and I'm going to end it right in here. So this way I have the groove, and I don't have to worry about hitting into that domino, plugging it up later. If I could run the groove all the way out like I did with the rails, but then what's going to happen is you would have the hole exposed on the end, and then we'd have to plug it up. Okay, so now that I have all my pieces cut and laid out, I have the dominoes in the respective ends there so that I can do a dry fit. Now the dry fit's going to serve two purposes. One, it's going to help me with the glue up process so I can see how well everything goes together. The second thing it's going to allow me to do is measure for my inside panel. Now you could use the math for the inside panel and just rely on that. Or you could do it the easy way and just with the dry fit, we know that the bottom doors, since we cut everything with the stop lock, we know everything is going to be the same size. All we need to do is dry fit one door. And once everything here in this door is perfect, I take my inside measurement here, my inside measurement here, and I know that I went in with the groove to the depth of 9mm on each side. So that would be adding 18, but since we want a little bit of wiggle room, instead of adding 18mm for the width of the groove and the depth of the groove here for the length, I'm just going to add 17 so that I have a little room for the panel to slide in and float freely. So first thing I'm going to do is measure for my length, and I have 525mm. We're going to add 17, and that's going to give me 542. So now we need the width from side to side. 298 to the inside, and to that we're also going to add 17, and we get 315. Okay, so I cut the panel to the dimensions from my measurements, and now I'm just going to separate the frame of the door. And this is where it's important to do a dry fit, because if it doesn't fit now, when you go to glue it up, it's not going to fit later. You're going to have to readjust, you're going to have to make a cut. So always do a dry fit. Now, when you do the dry fit, and it drops in like that. And then you take your top, and it bangs together like that. And then you have a nice tight seamed shaker flat panel door. That's when you know that you can go ahead and cut the rest of your panels for all the bottom doors that are all the same size, because you use the stop block in cutting all these parts, and you also use the depth of the router with a gauge so that you can cut all your grooves to the right depth. So now that you know that everything fits good, go ahead and cut all the rest of the panels, and then you can start to glue up the doors. And the panel has been pre-sanded before I glue this up so that it's already smooth on all sides and ready to go in, and I don't have to worry about it later on. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna butter up these dominoes here. Giving the domino a nice coat of glue on all sides, and you can see that will push up the glue, tap it in place, square all this up. Now making sure that all of my arrows are facing me so that I know that I have the faces correct so that the grooves all line up. Okay, we're ready for the most important part. Don't forget to put your panel in before you put the other part of the door in there. That's the beauty of these clamps. I could just set this off to the side standing up. Okay, so I have my doors all sanded up. They're all glued up nice, and they're ready to accept the hinges. I'm going to be using soft close Euro style hinges or concealed hinges. I'm going to be using this jig to install those cup hinges. Comes with the 35mm boring bit and this template guide. I have it set on 3 because I need these to be as per the instructions, and you'll get instructions with your hinges. These need to be 20mm away from the center of the hinge plate to the edge of the door. So what I've done is laid my doors out in the orientation that I want them to sit. Now I know the hinges are going to be on this side, but on the opposite end of the door. So what I'm going to do is just take the first door. I know the hinges are going to be here. So I'm just going to make a little mark just so that I don't have any confusion of what side the hinges are going to go on. Same thing here. Take my door, open it up, the hinges will go here. And now I can move this door out of the way. And I can take this door, bring it over here to the edge of the table. Just clamp the door down. Now this is going to be set with these little stops. I'm going to bring it right up to the edge there, and then I'm going to line up my plate. Take my hinge jig. I'm not going to move the jig yet because I have these 2 centering holes here, and that's going to accept a 1/16 of an inch drill bit. I'm just going to drill down 2 pilot holes, because that's where my screws are going to be that hold the hinge in place. Now I can unclamp the jig. And there you can see, now we have the self-centered pilot holes. Now I'll just take the supplied screws. I'm not going to drive them all the way with this. I'm just going to get them close. And then I'm going to use handheld screwdriver to tighten them up the rest of the way. So I'll just snug them. And the rest of the way. Obviously these are going to come back off later on for paint. But as of right now, we need to secure them in there so that we can mount them and adjust them on the actual cabinet itself. just took my pocket rule here that has a stop on it. I set it to 13. And so for a point of reference, I'm just going to make a mark there. And I'm going to do this on all of the tops of where the doors are going to sit, top of each face frame, so that we have an even reveal. This is going to be my point of reference when I set the doors. I want them to be all the same height. We can adjust that also later on as we put the doors in, but at least I know as I'm installing the hinges on the inside of the face frame, I want to get it as close to this line as possible. The hinges have these tabs, they index off of the face frame. So basically it just hugs the material here, so those tabs are going to sit right on the face of the face frame there. And then I'm going to just use my reference line and get as close by eye as I possibly can to that reference line. And then I'm just going to drill a small pilot hole. We're going to adjust this later. You can see the soft close hinge feature right there. Okay, so inside the hinges, you have all these adjustment screws here. This will move the cabinet in and out. This will move it front and back, and then this one here will adjust the height. So I'm going to bring this one down a little bit, just slightly, and then I'm going to close it again to see where we're at. There's a little bit of back and forth here when you adjust these hinges, so just be patient. Okay, so the height is almost good. I want to bring down this just a little bit here. So I did the adjustments and I have it finely tuned. So now you can see when they close, the center gap there for the reveal is perfect, 2 millimeters. I have a nice air gap on the edge there that allows me to open the door without it hitting. Same thing on this side. I'm going to get those little rubber stoppers. I always put those on the inside of my cabinet doors after they're completely painted, and that will stop it from making that noise when it closes and rattling. So after I get this all painted up, I'm going to get this installed at the house, and I'm going to film that because as I do that, I want to give you some tips and techniques and the way to level and plumb everything when you're installing it, and how to make sure you get everything, you know, tight up against the wall and fitting things into a location, using the shims to get everything perfect. All right, so stick around for that. That'll be the next video. So eventually on this channel, I will be building frameless cabinets. I will be doing inset doors. There's plenty of that stuff to come. I have a lot of jobs coming up and a lot of things that I need to do also to the shop. So make sure you stick around for that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys learned something. I hope it helped people of all skill levels. If you already know what you're doing, I hope you learned something new and different, or a different technique, maybe something that could save you time. If you never built cabinets before, I hope that this video series really takes you from not being able to build anything to build built-ins or full kitchen cabinets. Alright guys, so make sure you stick around for the rest of the series. I'll be doing an installation soon on this, and then we got to do a window seat on the other side, and we're going to make some panels to fill in around the wall. Alright guys, once again, thanks for joining me. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hit that picture of a notification bell. That'll notify you every time I upload a new video so that you don't miss anything. Check the description. I have links to all the tools that you see me use in this video. So I hope you guys really enjoyed that, and I hope you guys will stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for joining me in the shop.